Imagine being 25 years old and having less than £5,000 in savings. Sounds scary, but what if I told you that that is where the average 25-year-old sits in terms of their savings? And in the next few moments, I'm going to be going through the top 5 age categories and exposing their bottom 25%, average and top 25% of savings. Hey, I'm Jacob, finance grad turned commercial banker, and I've gathered data from the Office of National Statistics, Forbes and Money Farm to bring you the exact figures for the UK savings based on age. Now, before we even get into this video, I want you to go into that comment box and write down your age category and give a guess of what the average savings you think is based on that age category, and you'll be able to see if you're correct by the end of this video. But without further ado, let's get into the first age category, the 18 to 24-year-old range, so my range. Now, in this age category, people are juggling university, apprenticeships, their first jobs, and they're really getting to touch with what money is and how you can spend it. And this is why there can be quite a big range of how much you can save, and this is why you see quite a low average savings rate. Now, in this age category, you've often got student debt, you're often still a student, so you're trying to juggle the rent that you're paying, Ubers, food, social life, lots of different things, maybe even your own car insurance, and that is why people do not have much savings in this age category at all. Now, if we look at the bottom 25%, people here sit below £500, which is not an awful lot when you compare it to the top 25%. Now, a study by Money Farm showed that the top 25% has more than £8,000, which is a considerable amount, and it must be mainly from accumulating savings through an apprenticeship, a job, or maybe even a trust fund. And a further study by NatWest revealed that 3.8% of 18 to 25-year-olds have over £10,000 in savings. So that is roughly 200,000 people in the UK. And I would love to know some of these people because that is a lot of money. Now, we're really interested to hear if you're close to those numbers, and if you could drop yours below so that I can sort of sense check if these numbers are correct based on the data gathered. But let's now move on to the next category, the 25 to 35-year-olds. And this is where you start to see a bump in income because you've been in your job for quite some time now, maybe 5-6 years, and you've got your first promotion or you finally got some pay rises. So you start to see income increase in this category. However, you also tend to see expenses increase. You essentially experience lifestyle inflation, where income increases, so does expenses, and that difference between your income and expenses remains the same no matter how much you earn, and that has a negative effect on your savings. So you don't see a proportional increase, rather you see a tapered off increase in your savings. Now, in this category as well, people are often juggling their first child, they're also probably juggling a house, maybe buying their first car, maybe second car. So there's a lot more expenses going on in this category, and you can certainly see this in the numbers. But wait until we get to 35 to 44 because you're going to be surprised by what you see. For the bottom 25% of 25 to 34-year-olds, you can still experience to be having less than £500. It doesn't change, and that is a study by NatWest. However, the average does increase, and it increases by £5,000, pushing the average to just over £9,000. Now, what this means is that if you're below that £9,000 threshold, well, you're worse off than the other 50% in the population. But if you have more than £9,000, you're better than 50% of your population, which is, yeah, a great feeling. But for the top 25%, this increases quite considerably, and you can expect to have over £12,000 within that age group, which is an awful lot of money. Now, you're probably thinking, why is it not increased by much more? Well, it's because I'm looking at savings here and we're not looking at assets. Assets are excluded, and obviously a house is an asset, and that's why it hasn't increased by a massive amount. Now, let's move to the next category, 35 to 44. And once again, you can experience an increase in income, but you're juggling so many more expenses. Now, rather than having one kid, you're probably juggling 2 or 3. And the studies show that raising a kid from 0 to 18 costs on average £212,000. So if you're juggling 2-3 different kids, then well, good luck to you. You're going to need a lot of money, because that is a hell of a lot. That'd be £600,000 if you have 3 children. Anyway, aside from that, it's likely that you have maybe a second or a third property that you are looking at renting out. So it means that you're spending quite a lot of money to try and maintain your life and making different investments. And one of the key things that people do when they get to this age category is they end up buying a really nice car, and they end up going on their dream holidays and taking their kids with them. And that is costing literally thousands of pounds. And this is why we're going to see a very interesting average savings amount. So before we get to that, let's look at the bottom 25%. So we do see an increase from £500 to £1,000. So if you have less than 1,000, you're in the bottom quartile. To be in the top quartile, you have more than £15,000. And in order for you to fit slap bang in the middle, we actually see a decrease, and this decrease is to £7,400, which is interesting because that's a £2,000 drop from the previous age range, and it's purely because of these added expenses. Now, if you want to stay in that top 25% or even get into that top 25%, stay until the end of the video, because I'm going to explain to you exactly how I fit into that top 25% for the 18 to 24 age category. Now, anyway, just to give you a little bit more perspective, I'm going to show you the 2 age categories after this. And this is moving into the 45 to 54 and 55 plus. Now, when you turn 45, this is where you have a mind shift, and that mind shift is retirement. You're thinking about maximizing your savings for your retirement, because you're thinking you've got 30 years left, 30, 40 years once you retire, and you want as much money as possible. And that's where people start taking their finances a lot seriously. That's when they start having a budget spreadsheet. That's where they start seeing that lifestyle inflation decreasing. So rather than your expenses being super close to your income, they actually start to taper off. So that expensive car that you once had, it gets gone. That expensive house that you used to have, well, it's downsized because your kids have moved out, and now you're living in a lot cheaper place. You're not going on those dream holidays, and you're not going on lots of restaurants, takeaways, holidays. As a result, you start to see a proportional increase in your savings. And that's why the average savings for the 45 to 54 age category increases to £13,000. And the top 25% has a massive increase to £25,000, whilst the bottom 25% remains around the same at £3,000. Now, 55 plus, it's the same story. And that's why you see an increase in the average to £22,000. You see a huge increase in the top 25% to £40K. And well, the bottom 25% is around £3,000 or less. So not an awful increase, but it's all because people are thinking about their retirement. Now, this wouldn't be an interesting video if I didn't tell you how you could vault your savings into the top 25%, into that top quartile. Now, as someone who sits there, I think the biggest thing is frugal living. I've spoken about lifestyle inflation and how your income increases as much as your expenses increases. If you lived through your 20s and through your 30s quite frugally, and you keep your expenses around the same, income's going to increase. Income's going to keep on increasing and increasing, but your expenses are going to stay the same. And that gap is going to be filled in with your savings. So you're going to see proportional increases there. Now, by living frugally, I mean don't go for a super expensive house, don't go for a super expensive car on finance, don't have unwanted subscriptions, don't go on too many night outs, which are going to cost you a fortune. Just live quite frugally so that you can have lots of money in the future. Now, the second one and final one is invest in a budget spreadsheet. Come on, this is the most simple thing that you could do. And if you don't really understand how to, I've got a whole YouTube video and I've got a whole Skillshare course on mastering your money, personal budgeting, and making sure that you track your expenses so that you save money. So if you are interested in that, click the link in the description for a free month on Skillshare, and you can just watch my entire course basically for free. And that is 7 years of knowledge of investing, of budgeting, of earning money, all compiled into just over an hour. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now, I really want you to drop a comment below and tell me what your age range is and what your savings is, because then I can sense check these numbers and we can spark a conversation. It'll certainly be quite interesting to see. Anyway, before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit that like button, and watch some other content. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.